On the early morning of December 1st, 1948, the gentle surf of Somerton Beach in Adelaide, Australia, washed against a profound and enduring enigma. A man lay motionless on the sand, his head resting against the seawall, legs casually crossed as if he had simply fallen asleep while gazing at the ocean. But the stillness of his form betrayed a darker reality. He was dead, stripped of all identification, and completely out of place on the sandy shoreline. How does a well-dressed individual simply cease to exist, leaving behind a pristine corpse, but absolutely no trace of a name or a past? The initial discovery was made by morning beachgoers who noticed the eerie calmness of the scene. John Lyons, a local jeweler, approached the figure and quickly realized the man was devoid of life. The victim was impeccably dressed in a white shirt, a tie, brown trousers, and a neatly pressed double-breasted jacket, despite the warm summer weather. A half-smoked cigarette rested undisturbed on his right collar, suggesting he had been lying down when he took his final breath. When local police arrived to process the scene, the immediate anomaly was not the cause of death, but the meticulous sanitization of the victim's clothing. The garments were of high-quality, tailored construction, but every single identifying manufacturer's tag and laundry mark had been carefully and deliberately excised with sharp scissors. His pockets yielded ordinary items: an unused rail ticket, a bus ticket, an aluminum comb, a half-empty packet of chewing gum, and some matches. However, there was no wallet, no cash, and absolutely no identification cards. The subsequent autopsy only deepened the profound confusion surrounding the unidentified body. According to the official coroner's report, the victim's heart was of normal size, but his spleen was strikingly enlarged and firm, while his liver was severely congested with blood. The pathologist, Dr. John Dwyer, noted that the man's stomach contained the remains of a pasty, alongside massive internal pooling of blood. Dwyer strongly suspected acute poisoning, yet comprehensive toxicology screens returned completely negative for any known barbiturates or common lethal substances. The sheer impossibility of the medical findings stalled detectives in their tracks. If the man was murdered with poison, it was an entirely untraceable compound breaking down in the system before death. This suggested a highly sophisticated modus operandi, a distinct pattern of operation that pointed far away from a tragic common suicide and heavily toward a calculated professional assassination. The authorities were dealing with an invisible weapon and an invisible man. Weeks passed with the body resting quietly in the morgue, unclaimed and unnamed. A significant breakthrough seemed imminent in January 1949. When railway staff located a brown suitcase that had been checked into the Adelaide railway station cloakroom on November 30th, the day before the body was discovered. The ticket matched the timeline of the dead man's movements, offering a tantalizing glimpse into his final hours. Inside the abandoned case lay a strange, eclectic assortment of personal items. Investigators cataloged a stenciling brush, a modified table knife honed to a sharp edge, a pair of scissors, and a very specific type of orange barber thread. This exact unusual thread had been used to repair a seam in the dead man's trousers, conclusively linking the luggage to the corpse. Yet the contents offered no real clarity regarding his identity. 3 items within the suitcase bore the name Keene, but police quickly realized this was a deliberate, mocking misdirection. No missing person by that name matched the physical description of the corpse, and the tags that had not been removed seemed intentionally left behind to confuse the trail. The deliberate sanitization of both the body and the suitcase contents indicated a staggering level of premeditation. Who meticulously strips a man of his entire history before he dies? The investigation languished until April 1949, when a microscopic re-examination of the victim's clothing by a forensic expert yielded the most confounding clue of the entire case. Sewn deep within the waistband of the dead man's trousers was a tiny, hidden fob pocket designed for carrying a pocket watch. Concealed tightly within this secret recess was a small, rolled-up scrap of printed paper. Carefully unfurling the delicate paper, detectives found 2 distinct words printed in an elegant font: Tamam Shud. Baffled by the unfamiliar text, police consulted local linguistic experts and public library officials. The phrase was quickly identified as Persian, translating roughly to "it is ended" or "finished." This specific phrase was recognized as the closing line of the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam, a 12th century book of poetry focusing deeply on living life to the fullest and accepting mortality without regret. The philosophical weight of the words, tucked secretly next to a dead man's skin, transformed a local John Doe into a national and soon international enigma. The Tamam Shud case had officially begun. A widespread public appeal to find the exact book from which the scrap was torn yielded an astonishing, almost unbelievable result. A local physician came forward with a rare first edition translation of the Rubaiyat. He claimed he had found the book tossed into the back seat of his unlocked car, which had been parked on a street near Somerton Beach on the night of November 30th. Microscopic examination of this specific volume confirmed that the Tamam Shud scrap had been perfectly torn from its final page, matching the paper fibers exactly. But the physical book held something far more sinister than missing poetry. On the blank inside back cover, investigators discovered faint indentations of handwriting, visible only under the glare of ultraviolet light. The ghostly indentations revealed 5 lines of capital letters, with the second line crossed out in a manner suggesting a mistake. It appeared to be a cipher, a sequence of seemingly random letters starting with W, R, G, O, A, B, A, B, D. Military intelligence, cryptographers, and civilian codebreakers alike descended on the text, but they completely failed to decipher it. The sequence remained unbroken, a silent wall of letters guarding the dead man's secrets. Alongside the baffling code was a faint, unlisted telephone number. Detectives swiftly traced this number to a young nurse named Jessica Thomson, who lived on Mosley Street, mere hundreds of meters from the exact spot where the unidentified body was discovered. The proximity was too perfect to be a mere coincidence. When police arrived at Thompson's doorstep and presented her with a lifelike plaster bust of the Somerton Man, her reaction was intensely visceral. According to the official notes of Detective Sergeant Lean, she appeared completely taken aback, physically recoiling to the point of nearly fainting. Yet despite her obvious shock, she steadfastly and repeatedly denied knowing the man or having any idea why her phone number was in his book. Thomson did admit that she had owned a copy of the Rubaiyat during the Second World War, but claimed she had given it to an Australian Army lieutenant named Alf Boxall. Had Boxall died on the beach? This promising theory shattered completely when Boxall was located alive and well in Sydney, with his copy of the book and its final page completely intact. The dead man was not Boxall, and Thompson's connection remained a maddening dead end. Exploring the geographical and historical context of 1948, Adelaide adds a chilling, paranoid layer to the puzzle. The city was a bustling post-war hub and situated uncomfortably close to the Woomera testing range, a highly secure, top-secret site for British and Australian missile and weapons research. The atmosphere was thick with the early tensions of the Cold War. Whispers of international espionage inevitably began to permeate the public consciousness and the press. An untraceable poison, meticulously removed clothing labels, a hidden pocket, an unbreakable code, and a geographic proximity to military secrets. These were all the classic hallmarks of a sophisticated intelligence operation. Was the Somerton Man a Soviet spy, silenced before he could pass on critical information? As years bled into decades, the plaster bust sat quietly in a police museum, a haunting physical reminder of an utter investigative failure. The unidentified man rested in a local Adelaide cemetery under a somber headstone that simply read, "Here lies the unknown man who was found at Somerton Beach." The human toll of the mystery was a nameless grave and a family somewhere in the world wondering what happened to their loved one. The physical case files gathered dust, but the psychological allure of the mystery never faded from the public mind. Amateur sleuths, code breakers, and seasoned academics spent lifetimes trying to crack the 5 lines of text found on the book. But the letters yielded no coherent message, resisting every mathematical and linguistic algorithm thrown at them. In the 21st century, the landscape of forensic science shifted dramatically, offering a new beacon of hope. Researchers, recognizing the vast potential of advanced genetic genealogy, campaigned tirelessly for the exhumation of the Somerton Man. They believed that modern DNA evidence could finally pierce the veil of anonymity that historical technology could not. In 2021, the South Australian police finally approved the exhumation, a monumental decision in the history of the case. Professor Derek Abbott, working alongside prominent American genetic genealogists, managed to extract usable DNA. Crucially, they utilized hairs that had been trapped in the original plaster death mask, bypassing the heavily degraded and compromised remains buried in the earth. Through painstaking cross-referencing of massive genetic databases and obscure historical records, the scientific team built a sprawling, complex family tree. They worked backward from distant cousins, narrowing thousands of genetic possibilities down to a single, previously undocumented branch of a family originating from the state of Victoria. The DNA evidence pointed definitively to an electrical engineer and instrument maker named Carl Charles Webb. Born in 1905, Webb had no recorded death date and had simply vanished from public records in the late 1940s. He had a known affinity for poetry and was known to bet on horses, which some theorize could explain the cryptic letters as betting abbreviations rather than a spy code. Yet, assigning a legal name to the corpse did not magically illuminate the deep shadows of 1948. If he was Charles Webb, an engineer from Victoria, why was he in Adelaide on that fateful summer day? What was his true connection to Jessica Thomson, and why did she feign total ignorance when confronted with his face? The cipher remains uncracked. The exact biological cause of death is still technically undetermined by a coroner, and the profound philosophical meaning of the Tamam Shud scrap hidden in his pocket is locked away in the past. The Somerton Man may have finally reclaimed his identity, but the narrative of his final days remains fractured. The beach continues to wash away the footprints of December, leaving behind a chilling reminder that some secrets, even when named, are designed to be taken to the grave.